The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It is directed by Michael Chavez and stars Patrick Wilson, Vera Farmiga, and John Noble, just to name a few. And once again, we take up with the Warrens. This time, they're on the case of a man who has committed a murder, but he claims that he was possessed at the time. And the Warrens do everything they can to stop the devil that made him do it. And in doing so, prove his innocence. So the Conjuring franchise. However you might feel about the movies as a whole, you have to admit, as modern day horror movies go, it has been extremely successful. And most of that success goes to what I like to call the main Conjuring storyline, the ones that feature the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine, played by, of course, Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. I'm a huge fan of my favorite being The Conjuring Part 2. I love Part 1. I really enjoyed it. But for some reason, Part 2 is just my ultimate favorite in the entire group of movies. And so now we take back up directly with the Warrens here in The Conjuring Part 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. And my excitement for this was 50-50. On one hand, I really enjoy when the stories focused on the Warrens and their direct cases. On the other hand, I was bummed that James Wan, creator of this universe, so to speak, wasn't returning as the director. Instead, we have Michael Chavez, who was originally the director for another Conjuring universe movie, The Curse of La Llorona. And that one, as the movies go, I mean, that one for me is like maybe a 5, 5 out of 10, that kind of thing. It's not bad, it's just, it's nowhere near as scary as I was hoping it would be, or near as interesting even. So here we are with The Devil Made Me Do It. And overall, I'll start by saying that I think it's an entertaining movie, and it's one of the better Conjuring films out there. But where does it stand among the Conjuring films? Where does it rank? Let's get into it. And first of all, the strength of this film for me has always been and still is Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. What they've done with these characters of Ed and Lorraine, and by the way, all of this stuff is supposedly based on true stories. However you feel about the Lorraines, however you feel about the Warrens, sorry, and however you feel about whether or not what they were saying is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, that sort of thing. However, if you believe in this stuff, all of that, we're going to put that aside. We're going to treat this like the movies does. We're going to just accept that what we're seeing here is real, just for the sake of this universe. And like I said, Patrick and Vera, they have always been the strength of these films. The relationship, what they've done with these two characters is just not something you see in horror. You get horror movies, and usually you get one lead, and that one lead doesn't really tend to show up in a lot of the other movies, maybe one or two, and then we move on to new characters and new reasons for these characters to be involved and that sort of thing. So having the same two characters in all these films, we've built a relationship with them. We tend to care whether or not they live or die, or at least I do, Part 2 really brought that home for me with everything that was going on with Valak, and it seemed like, Ed may die at any point in time. I did feel that sense of tension, and that returns here, where you really don't know, especially how this movie starts. It starts with them trying to exorcise a demon out of a child. And you do get a sense of, like with the previous movie, Part 2, that one of them is not going to make it to the end. And that is something, I feel like that is such a strong aspect of these films, because most horror movies, we don't really care, right? It's all about the body count. But the Conjuring movies are different in the sense that these guys are almost our superheroes in this universe, so we don't want to see them die. So I give them huge props for building on that suspense. And I think Michael Chavez, like I said, I didn't really enjoy Curse of La Llorona. It's not a bad film, it's just not a great one either. But I felt like he stepped his game up with this film. It's really well shot. There's some really cool moments that call back to James Wan way of doing things, and I enjoyed that. I like that. It's definitely Chavez doing his thing, but I do like that he respected what Juan tried to do with some of the camera angles and some of the ways that those scares would build. Honestly, I mean, by now, because we expect certain things to happen, it's not going to impact you as much. So the fact that he could still wring some decent scares, some decent creepy moments out of this movie, props to him on that one as well. There's a scene with a waterbed here that creeped the hell out of me, you know? Even though you really don't get to see as much as I would have wanted to see. And yeah, it's not the first time we've had waterbeds show up in horror movies. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street. But here it was very effective. And there are a few moments like that here that I thought was really well done. This next thing for me, and this is part of the story, I think some of it works and some of it doesn't. So, unlike the previous Conjuring films, this one is more of a kind of detective mystery story as opposed to a straight up battle against the supernatural or possession, that sort of thing. It was a nice change, I think, because you don't want these films to all be identical. Granted, this is what built this universe, but if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, it's gonna get boring. So I did like the element of kind of like a whodunit aspect where they are racing against time to try and prove that this young man didn't do what he did of his own volition. But at the same time, where this falls down is it feels like it's like two stories being told and it's disjointed. It doesn't mesh the way it should. There's a courtroom aspect to this that they pull in, you know, because that's what I thought we were going for here. I honestly, it made me think of the exorcism of Emily Rose. And I wanted to see how this stuff would play out in a courtroom. I wanted to see how they would use what they were finding in the courtroom, how the lawyer would apply that to her defense. I think that could have been really interesting if they had done it. But we don't get any of that. There's really nothing happening on the legal aspect side of things. You know, how do you prove demonic possession as a defense? And you know what? I feel like they bit off more than they could chew there, because that was never going to be something easy to show in a courtroom setting and not make it seem ridiculous. So I feel like they had a good idea. They have some interesting things going on here with this time around the antagonist is not all demonic, you know, it's actually, there is an actual evil human element at play here. But maybe they just couldn't figure out how to make the two meet. And because of that, the tone here is very strange. It almost plays out like a television show, like you're watching a mini series, you know, and who knows, a Conjuring miniseries might be interesting, you know, but as a movie, there's just this, I don't know, unevenness to the tone of this film, because you don't, 1 minute it goes very supernatural, it goes back to its Conjuring roots, and the next minute we have this mystery and trying to figure out who killed who and why and when did this happen, and we're traveling from town to town, and what it was too much, you know. So I think they should have picked a road and stuck with it, and this is where this film kind of starts to fall apart for me. There's some decent visuals here. There's some stuff, I actually saw some deleted scenes that I wish was in there, because there's moments in the beginning, right beginning of the film, not to get too spoilery, but I think this does show up in the trailer. There's a scene where the camera falls while they're doing the exorcism. It falls right in front of a television, so it does this thing where the image is looping on itself. And you just know, when I saw that, I immediately thought, okay, this is going to have some meaning later on. And yet later on, because they cut out a scene that takes place with Lorraine, it doesn't apply. So they have this cool moment with her where she's like seeing a version of herself, almost like time is flowing in this weird repetitive way. It's cool, it's a neat visual, but I think the original visual would have fit in perfectly, and it would have at least, you know, connect with what happened before. So overall, guys, I mean, the acting here is fine. The acting by the young man who is possessed. I think the person he's playing, his name is Arnie something Johnson, something like that. It is based on a real life case, and the person did go to jail, but not for a very long time. And he got out, that sort of thing. He ended up, I guess, I think it was, he went down for manslaughter instead of straight up murder. That's so I guess they were able to use what they found to somehow help his case. Again, we don't get enough of it. We don't know exactly what happened, which is a shame. John Noble is in this, and John Noble gets a lifetime pass for me on everything, just because I loved him in Fringe so much. He was so freaking awesome in that. He is an awesome actor. So even though he doesn't do that much here at all, he has a small, significant role, but a small role in this. John gets a pass. You know, I don't care if he's only on screen for like 10 minutes. And like I said, there are elements here that I did like, and it's definitely a movie I want to see again. I want to watch it again to see all those little Easter eggs, those callbacks to other films, maybe even build up to something else to come, you know, what's next for the Conjuring universe. But where this stands to me, 1 and 2 are still the best. You know, 2 is still my favorite, and then I put 1 right after that. And as for 3, I have to give it some thought. But I mean, this one, if you're taking just the Warren films, this one is definitely the last in the bunch for me. All the films overall, I would have to give that some thought, because I actually do kind of like the Annabelle Origin films a lot. Not the film, sorry, that film. The one directed by, is it David Hansberg, the gentleman behind Shazam and Lights Out. You know, I did really enjoy that. I thought he did something, if of all the Annabelle films, I felt that one is the best, you know. So that one is pretty high up on my list. This movie, this movie for me was about a 6.5 out of 10. You know, I need to see it again. I really do need to see it again to see where I fall. But overall, the positives, guys, is that Patrick and Vera, they do their thing, they do it well, they deliver, they still have me invested in that couple, in their relationship, in their fight against evil. I think visually there's some really cool stuff going on here. There's some creepy stuff. I do wish these films would use more practical effects, but you know, I can deal with the CG here. It's not that bad. I don't know how well it's gonna hold up, but it's not that bad. You know, there are some very creepy elements here that work. I do like the satanic elements that they've brought in, and the fact that there's a human evil that they have to deal with. I hope we see more of that. We did get some of that in even the Annabelle movie. They do bring up the topic of that cult showing up again. So it would be kind of awesome, I think, for Ed and Lorraine not just to have to go up against something demonic, but people. You know, because I mean, what's scarier than a bunch of evil people doing evil things, you know? Having to face that and having to face something demonic together at the same time, you know, that definitely raises the stakes. And I do feel like this movie was trying to raise the stakes by adding that element. So like I said, you know, I'm kind of, 6.5 is where I'm landing at with this. I don't think it's a terrible film. I just wish it was more even in tone. I wish it had a bit more tension to it, a bit more suspense, you know. But as it goes, it's a welcome addition to the Conjuring universe. I wouldn't kick it out. So yeah, about a 6 out of 10. And that's going to be it for this one, guys. So if you've seen this movie, let me know what you think. And let me know as a whole, the entire Conjuring universe, what is your absolutely most favorite in these films? Which one do you think is the absolute worst in the entire lineup? For me, that's The Nun. That was a huge letdown. I would even put La Llorona before The Nun. Seriously, that was a huge letdown. They built up that character in such an awesome way, and then just let us down completely with that movie. So I hope they deliver. I think The Crooked Man is supposed to be the next one we're getting. So let's hope that turns out to be something interesting. And if you like this video, please feel free to hit that thumbs up button. It's always appreciated. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, you can of course click on my face when it pops up right about there. And you can check out past horror movie reviews somewhere along this side. So until the next one, guys. Bye-bye.